What's going on, guys? In this video we're going to go over the best gear for your Demon Hunter and the best way to optimize that gear. Now there's going to be a few builds that you've probably seen that might alter things a little differently based on what gear you have, but if you're going with the default 6-piece Marauders, Bombardier's Rucksack, this is what's going to get you there. And keep in mind, I do play 6 characters quite a bit, so I don't have all my gear dedicated towards one specific character, but we'll be able to go over those items with you to give you an idea on items you're going to want to look for and how you're going to be able to optimize that. Now, for the weapon, you want an Atreyu bow because of the extra cold damage that you have. If you don't have an Atreyu, you're going to need a Crider Shot. And if you don't like the Crider Shot and you're just going for something that's got, you know, nice damage on it, nice two-handed damage. Now, we're using this because of the Elemental Arrow effect. Because you gain 3 Hatred, that gives us 3 Hatred Spinners. It allows us to shoot that as well to be able to proc Bane of the Trapped, stuff like that. So for this, you're obviously going to need a green gem in it. Crit hit damage is extremely important on a lot of builds. Crider Shot is really nice. Like I said, you can go with other, you know, bows here. I'm going to leave that up to you. Ideally, you want an Atreyu above all others, generally. For this build in particular, that's what you're going to go for. As far as the Marauders pieces, boots, pants, chest, shoulders, and helm is the setup you're going to go with. Now, there's a very important post that we're going to leave in the description on breakpoints with your Tasker and Theos. It's very important to pay attention to the increased attack speed of your pets. So keep that in mind when you are looking at your attack speed. Mine is at 1.90. With this, you can basically multiply it by 1.5. And that puts me, I think, at 2.84, 2.85. And that gives us the area that we need to get to hit a break point to be able to cast for our sentries to be able to cast a little bit quicker. And I'll leave that in the post. It's way too much information to go into. You can scroll down the page a little bit, find those break points, and just kind of shoot for those target attack speeds, which will also determine where you put some of your Paragon points into. Since I'm sitting right at a break point, I'm not putting any into attack speed. However, you might want to consider that when you're going over your gear. I, unfortunately, have not found a pair of Tasker and Theos on my Demon Hunter, so these were actually transferred over from an intelligence character. Ideally, you would like the trifecta, maybe reduce cooldown, maybe you want to keep the vitality on there. Ideally, you want dexterity, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and attack speed. And if you don't want attack speed in there, you could go with cooldown reduction to be able to, you know, pop your companion a little bit more often, be able to get your sentries up a little bit quicker, or the vitality resistance direction you want to go. For your shoulders, now you can go a couple directions with the one that I rolled here. Ideally, you want dexterity and vitality 100% of the time, and sentry damage 100% of the time. That 4th primary stat is, you know, one of those things that you can kind of either go cooldown reduction depending on how you want to play. If you're running with a group of Demon Hunters, it's good to keep the companion up full time, and you can rotate that between, you know, the 2, 3, 4 of you, and that way you have a permanent uptime on the 30% increased damage. But the cooldown reduction also allows you to get your sentries up a little bit quicker, and that's something to consider as well. If you don't want the cooldown reduction there, if you're feeling comfortable with where you're at and the group that you're playing with, go with all resistances there. There's not a problem with that. We have to be able to survive. You know, they did buff up the Demon Hunters, so that does help quite a bit. The other part is, in the secondary, if you're getting into the extremes, any type of, you know, elemental resistance in the secondary is going to go a long way, and it's good to have some diversity there spread across the board. So if you're playing just a Demon Hunter, those are other things you're going to keep an eye out for after the primary stat, so you can keep that in mind. Any type of damage reduction you can get there is a huge bonus. For the helmet, the primary stats that you're going to look for generally are dexterity, crit hit chance, and then cluster arrow damage is a really good way to go, because in between casting shots, you're going to be able to spend your hatred as you build stuff back up. So you're going to cast cluster arrow in between when you're building up hatred. Some people like to go that route, some don't. That's going to be up to you, especially depending on if you have a Crider shot and if you are running with the elemental arrow there. Because, like I said, we don't have everything in perfect condition because of the diversity of characters that we play. You do see my gears a little different, but dexterity, crit hit chance, cluster arrow damage, and of course the socket with the reduced cooldown in it. You'll see in the secondary there we have the extra cold resistance plus the duration reduction by 35%, which is always nice to have. If you don't have cluster arrow, life or vitality is definitely a way to go. For your chest piece, also very important, dexterity, vitality, sentry damage, and 3 sockets. I'm pretty sure it's default now, but that is the absolute 100% what you're gonna need. If you can't get sentry damage, all resistances is the next way to go. Some of these can be hard to roll because you're gonna try and hit sentry damage as much as possible on all of your gear. 15% is the max, so keep that in mind when you're rolling, spending those Forgotten Souls and getting all that going. Again, in the secondary there, having an elemental resistance is always good to keep in there. Now, because of the way I've been running in the higher greater rifts, I'm running 2 resistance gems here, mainly because I've had trouble getting a little bit extra diversity on the arcane here. The jailer wrecks me when we fight those monsters. It's good to keep as much distance as you can to let your sentries do the damage. So you can kind of stay out of range of that at times, but it's not always going to be 100%, and you don't want to get one shot by that. So if you have a little bit better diversity and you have a little bit higher resistance there, definitely consider going with that. So keep that in mind when you are gearing up on that secondary there, to keep an eye out for that, as well as the primaries. For the belt, a Witching Hour escapes me to this day on all of my characters. A Witching Hour is the #1 belt you want to go with because of the extra crit hit damage that you're going to get and the attack speed generally. So ideally there you would like to have dexterity, vitality, attack speed, and crit hit damage. If you get one, great. Let me know how that works for you. I'm at Paragon 518 and haven't found a single one on any of my characters. So keep that in mind, and again, the secondary, also keep that in mind. For the pants, dexterity, vitality, and all resistance. Now, I had to roll these previously, and I got the sockets on there. You need the 2 sockets, obviously. Armor, I'm just having to keep that for now. The all resistance would be a huge benefit here. Since dexterity now gives armor, you don't have to worry about that as much, and it's always good to focus on all resistances now playing a dexterity character. For your boots, again, dexterity, vitality, all resistances, and cluster arrow damage. Now, again, we have armor instead of all resistances. We're waiting for a better pair to drop. If you are playing a dedicated Demon Hunter, you're going to have a lot higher chances of getting that gear because you're going to be spending shards and farming with them quite a bit more. So, hopefully you have a little bit better luck there, but the extra cluster arrow damage there, and on your helmet, if you have it there, plus the extra sentry damage across the board, you're going to do a lot of damage. Now, that cluster arrow damage does not stack with the sentry damage. That cluster arrow damage is strictly for when you cast it outside of the sentry, so keep that in mind. You actually have to cast cluster arrow if you want to get that bonus. Bombardier's Rucksack, another important piece here of the sentry build. Ideally, you'd like to have dexterity, a perfect 20% attack speed, a perfect 10% crit hit chance, sentry damage, and then in place there reduces all resource costs. That's extremely unimportant for this build. You would either like to have cooldown reduction or vitality. Depending on your toughness, you might want to go with vitality. The cooldown reduction, again, back to what I said earlier, it's not a necessity, but it does come in handy quite often. For your bracers, I'm running this because I do move around quite a bit. I do pop off quite a few cluster arrows. You'd like to have max cold damage, dexterity, vitality, and crit hit chance. Now there's another set of bracers out there to where you can roll attack speed, crit hit chance, vitality, dexterity, and an elemental damage. So you can probably go with those if you have them. Great. If not, you know, certainly check with a Reaper's Wraps. There's a couple other options you can go with. Now, this is probably one of the most flexible pieces of the build, but make sure you've got that cold skill damage, crit hit chance, dexterity, and vitality. For your rings, Royal Ring of Grandeur, of course, is very important to be able to hit your 6-piece bonus to be able to run the Tasker and Theos. I have a trifecta on here. It's good depending on where your sockets are. Most demon hunters are running 2 sockets between their amulet and their ring. Some are running 3, depending on how good your rolls are. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. I need the crit hit chance, so I can't roll this away. So we do keep this in here, and we'll go over the legendary gems at the end. For my other ring, if you're running solo, run a unity, split the damage with your follower, make sure your follower has a unity. This one, the Compass Rose, because it runs with 5 primary stats, we're able to get a decent roll here. If the attack speed was crit hit damage, that would have been great, but that's not quite how it works. So we've got the socket, we've got crit hit chance, the dexterity and vitality is good to have between your rings to keep your toughness up. There's a couple of options you can go with. Some people are running Stone of Jordan. I haven't seen that too often. We just happen to have this in place because we got a decent roll on our Traveler's Pledge. Not a great roll, but we're getting, you'll see the 2-piece bonus, the extra vitality and the crit hit damage. So we're making up for a little bit lack of our crit hit damage with this set. Now, I haven't had as much time to farm the Ubers to be able to get the Hellfire Amulet. Certainly run a Hellfire Amulet. If you can get steady aim, archery, you know, any number of the ones that you would like to have as far as a passive, but you can't because you need to run awareness, and probably some people are running perfectionist, some aren't, and they're just kind of, you know, hoping that they stay alive. Some people have really great gameplay and they can do that, and they can run with ballistics. So keep that in mind when you are, you know, farming that up. I haven't had much luck. I think I've gotten I don't know, maybe tactical advantage, and just a couple crappy ones that aren't really going to do much for me, and the rolls weren't that great for me to replace anything. So keep that in mind. Other amulets, anything that has crit hit damage, crit hit chance, dexterity, and then of course a socket. Now, as far as legendary gems go, Enforcer is absolutely one that you're going to need to run with. The increased damage of your pets, which are sentries, and if you have 5 of them up, all 5 of them are being increased. Ours is at 32 at the moment. You definitely want to make sure and boost that up. That's where your main damage is going to come from. If you're running 3 legendary gems, the other ones you would run are Bane of the Trapped, and I've seen this one used quite a bit, and I've been trying this a lot because as a demon hunter, you're trying to keep damage and stay out of there and let your sentries do work and kind of stay right on the cusp of the edge of the screen that allows you to be able to still hit stuff, but maybe not necessarily take that damage. The Zai's Stone of Vengeance, damage you deal is increased by X% for every 10 yards between you and the enemy hit. So that's a good thing to keep around when you're, you know, staying back. If you're playing in group, this is a lot more effective because you can keep max range, especially if you have a tank. Bane of the Trapped, because if you are using Frost Arrow on your Elemental Arrow, you're going to be able to, you know, split that, and you'll see it, you know, it does split, and you'll be able to hit the crowd control a little bit more to be able to get that. So that's the gear, guys. That's a couple things to keep in mind. If you want to know about the Paragon points, use your movement speed in conjunction with your gear. You get the 10% from the ferret. Throw the rest into dexterity. Offense, I have cooldown reduction, then crit hit damage. And then because I need the crit hit chance, I've got that there. Like I said, the attack speed I'm okay with because I hit the break point right on the button, just a little over. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the link below. Defense, you want to go with resist all first. Then armor. You might be tempted to go with life. I have found that life regeneration, once you're able to put, you know, a handful of points into it, is working out far more effectively. So I've been going with that across the board for all of my characters. You might want to keep that in mind. Life on hit, always go with this first. Resource cost reduction, because I'm pumping out a lot of cluster arrows. You can certainly go with area damage. Keep in mind, I don't believe your sentries do get the effect from area damage. I could be wrong there. But you know, gold fine, not really that important. If you saw the earlier build, things have changed just a little bit. We're going to the Elemental Arrow with Frost Arrow now that we've got the Crider. Multi-shot with Arsenal, Vault with Rattling Rolls so we can stun stuff. If need be, you might want to go some other direction if depending on the group you're in. Sentry with Spitfire, Cluster Arrow with Maelstrom, the Companion with Wolf Companion. Then we've got Custom Engineering, Steady Aim because we are trying to keep max distance. The extra 20% damage is almost a guarantee because 10 yards is very small in the screen. awareness, so we get that extra life. It's very important to have in greater rifts, and so is perfectionist, depending on how high you're going. If you feel okay, you know your gameplay, you know how to stay alive, you can certainly go with ballistics or archery or any number of directions, even cold a week, depending on how you're playing. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. Guys, hopefully this helps in your optimization of your gear or during your gear hunt, wanting to know what to look for. I took a poll. We looked around at a bunch of different gear. There are some other different, setups you can go with if you're looking for just, a standard build and you're not, top 100 leaderboards. This is probably going to work very effectively for you. Like I said, there are some other routes you can go. There's different, quivers that are going to change your gear a little bit depending on your group composition. But if you're looking for a flat out, this is like a cookie cutter build that you know is going to do a ton of damage and get you in higher greater rifts. This is the gear optimization that's going to get you there and have you clearing stuff probably a little bit more effectively than you did before. If you got any questions about the build, feel free to leave those in the comments below. If this helped you out, feel free to hit that like button. I always appreciate that. Any feedback you guys have to share, whether it be through that button or whether it be through a comment below. Until next time, guys, happy hunting. We'll see you again.